Good day. I've been asked to give a testimonial on my experiences with Ayurveda, and I'm more than happy to do so. I've had three experiences in my life where I had serious medical conditions, but it would be too long to talk about all three of them, so I'll just talk about the last one. In 2015, I was diagnosed with an incurable cancer called multiple myeloma. And my symptoms at the time, I didn't have any symptoms. I was actually diagnosed by accident when I went in for a blood test and they looked at my blood results and they went, something's wrong here. So, to make a long story short, they started me on chemotherapy immediately. And I followed if you want, the suggested path by my oncologist. And I went through the chemotherapy and I went through the stem cell therapy and everything that was required according to Western medicine. And the regimen required that before I have my stem cell therapy, that I actually stop taking the chemotherapy. Now, the body has a very specific way that it operates. The first time a human is exposed to something, a pathogen or whatever, not a pathogen, but an element in the world, the first time your body experiences that element or that object, it can't be allergic to it. It can only be allergic to something once it has created antibodies against this object or this substance. And the second time you take it, that's when you have an allergic reaction. Well, that's what happened to me 3 months after the stem cell therapy when they started giving me the chemotherapy once again on a maintenance dosage. And my body had a very violent reaction to this chemotherapy. The reaction was as follows. My body stopped producing red blood cells. I started losing weight at a tremendous rate. I went from 225 pounds down to 160 pounds in a matter of 60 days. I was going in to the hospital every 2 weeks for blood transfusions. I would be brought to the hospital in a wheelchair, and at the end of 5 hours of blood transfusions, I was able to stand up and walk out of the hospital as if everything was normal. But 2 weeks later, I was back in the hospital in a wheelchair for more blood transfusions. And it was at that point that I spoke with Dr. Raju, the Ayurvedic doctor, and he sent me immediately this compound from India. And he told me to take it, and I was taking this Smriti, he called it. It's spelled Smriti. He sent me this compound, and I was taking 1 teaspoon of it 7 times a day. And when I received it, it was actually about 4 days after my last blood transfusion. Actually, no, not 4 days. It was about 10 days after my last blood transfusion. And I started taking it. It was on a Sunday. And 4 days later, on a Thursday, I went into the hospital. And again, I went in a wheelchair. And they took a blood test and immediately an emergency blood transfusion. I continued taking the Smriti. And Smriti, just on a side note, is a Sanskrit word that means memory. And Dr. Raju explained to me that this medicine he was giving me, this Ayurvedic medicine, was something that restored the memory and the cells in your body. He explained to me that something had gone wrong on a very molecular level, a very fundamental level of my body, that these cells had lost the memory of what they were supposed to be doing. And this smriti restored the memory in these cells of proper functioning. So I continued to take it 7 times a day. And 2 weeks after my blood transfusion, I had been taking it now for 18 days. And I went into the hospital as required because I needed to have my blood test again. And previously, every time the normal red blood count in a person's body is supposed to be between 140 and 170, whatever that figure means. And when I would have my blood tests, my blood cell count in my blood came out at a reading of 70. So basically, I had half of the red blood cells that I should have in my body, and the end result was I wasn't able to walk. I was in a wheelchair. And when the doctor got the results an hour after my blood test, and he looked at it and he said, "I don't understand." And I said, "Oops, sorry, that's my little budgie here, giving me a little complaint." When he looked at my blood cell results, he said, "I don't understand." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "You have a reading of 94. Your body has started producing red blood cells again." He scheduled me for another blood test a week later, and I came back into the hospital, and again he took a blood test, and now my red blood cell count was at 114. And this was without any chemotherapy of any kind. So this was back in 2016. I was previously diagnosed, as I told you, in 2015. And since 2016, all I've been taking as a therapy is my smriti from Dr. Raju. And no chemotherapy of any kind. And the cancer cells in my body at this time are almost undetectable, where I went to having over an ounce and a quarter of blood, actually, for every quart of blood in my body being cancerous blood cells. I'm down to like 2 grams. And 2 grams is like 1/15 of an ounce. It's 2 grams out of 1,000 grams is virtually nothing. And at my last visit at my oncologist a few months ago, he looked at my blood results and he says, "You're doing fantastic." And this is a cancer that used to kill people in the space of 2.5 years. So I'm looking at basically my 5th year since my diagnosis. And all I take is smriti from Dr. Raju, this medicine that has been in their family for generations. And I'm back up to 225 pounds. And I remember when I went in at the hospital that I weighed 160. And I told the head nurse when I was wheeled in on a wheelchair, and I said, "I think I'm dying." And she says, "Oh, don't be ridiculous, you're not dying." Well, 4 months after I started taking the smriti, and I was back in for a checkup, and I had gained 30 pounds. I was up to 190. And the head nurse said to me, she said, "Do you remember when you came in and you said that you thought you were dying? And we told you, no, you weren't." I said, "Yeah, I remember." And she said, "We thought you were dying also." Anyway, today I'm back up to my 225 pounds. And I look in the mirror and it's like it never happened to me. So if you have something wrong with you, you go see an Ayurvedic doctor who has an intuition that is indescribable, where they touch your pulse and your whole physiological situation is instantly available to them, and they know exactly what to do to bring you back to good health. And I wish this good health for all of you and for all of us. If you need any more information, you can contact Martha, and I'll tell you about the first 2 times and the first 2 serious experiences I had where Ayurveda basically saved my life. But this multiple myeloma was the 3rd and last one, and I thought that was the one we should talk about today. Good luck, and Jai Gurudev.